Imagine a time long, long ago, more than 2,500 years. The setting is northern India, where Nepal is today, and there lived a very kind king named Suddhodana and his wife, Queen Maya. They were loved by all their people and had everything you could imagine, a beautiful palace, land and wealth. But there was one thing they wanted more than anything: to have a child. 4 years the king and queen tried, but they couldn't have a baby. They began to lose hope, but then something incredible happened. One night, Queen Maya had a very special dream. She dreamed of a white elephant with 6 long, gleaming ivory tusks. It calmly entered her room and gently touched her belly with its trunk. At that time, a white elephant was considered a symbol of good fortune and wisdom. When she woke up, she knew something magical was about to happen. A few months later, the queen discovered she was pregnant. Can you imagine her joy? The entire kingdom was thrilled. The wise men and priests said that this baby would be very special, destined to become someone who would change the world. And then the day of the birth arrived. But it didn't happen in the palace, as everyone expected. Queen Maya was traveling and decided to stop in a beautiful place called Lumbini, a garden full of trees and colorful flowers. While walking there, she felt tired and leaned against a tree branch. And it was there, in that magical moment, that the baby was born. Baby Siddhartha was different from any other child. From the moment he was born, everyone who saw him noticed something special. He had a soft glow around him, as if a magical light was protecting him. The people were amazed. They had never seen a baby like him before. Shortly after the birth, the king and queen invited a well-known sage named Asita to meet the baby. Asita was a wise and highly respected man, and everyone wanted to know what he thought of the young prince. When he saw Siddhartha, something unexpected happened. The sage began to cry. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of emotion. "Why are you crying?" they asked him, curious. Asita explained with a gentle smile. "I cry because this boy will become a great teacher for the world. He will discover something I have spent my entire life searching for but never found: true wisdom and inner peace. He will not just be a prince. He is destined to be a spiritual leader, someone who will illuminate the path for many people." Asita also said something that made the king thoughtful. He explained that Siddhartha would not follow the expected path of becoming the next king. Instead, he would leave the palace and set out in search of truth and the meaning of life. So, from the moment he was born, Siddhartha Gautama was already different. He wasn't just an ordinary baby. He was a symbol of hope and change for the entire world. And this was just the first part of his incredible journey. Siddhartha Gautama grew up as a prince. He had everything anyone could ever want: toys, luxurious clothes, vast gardens, and even pet elephants. But his father, King Suddhodana, was worried about something. Remember how the sage Asita had said that Siddhartha would not follow the path of a king and would instead seek the truth about life? The king did not want that to happen. He loved his son and wanted Siddhartha to stay in the palace, safe and secure, and eventually become the next king. So what did the king do? He came up with a plan to protect Siddhartha from anything that might make him think about leaving the palace. He ordered the construction of 3 magnificent palaces, each designed for a different season of the year. One was for summer, complete with pools and fountains to keep cool. Another was for the rainy season, with cozy coverings and warm decorations. And the third was for winter, equipped with fireplaces and soft blankets. Siddhartha was surrounded by everything he could possibly desire. He had the best teachers, incredible celebrations, and was always surrounded by friends and family. He never saw anything sad or unpleasant because the king had ordered that anything that might make him unhappy be kept out of the palace. Siddhartha only knew beauty, fun, and comfort. As Siddhartha grew older, the time came for him to marry. Many kings and nobles brought their daughters, beautiful princesses, to meet the young prince. But Siddhartha fell in love with a young woman named Yashodhara, who was beautiful and kind. They got married, and shortly afterward, they had a son named Rahula. Rahula's birth brought great joy to the king, as he now felt certain that the family was secure and the royal lineage would continue. However, even with everything anyone could dream of, Siddhartha felt that something was missing in his heart. He felt restless, like a bird trapped in a golden cage. His father did everything he could to ensure Siddhartha never saw the world outside, thinking this would keep him happy and safe forever. But the prince felt a growing curiosity, a desire to see what lay beyond the palace walls. What Siddhartha didn't know was that his life was about to change forever. He wouldn't remain in the luxury and comfort of the palaces for much longer. Soon he would have the chance to see the real world, and that would change everything. Siddhartha Gautama lived for many years surrounded by luxury and comfort, never stepping beyond the palace walls. He had everything he could possibly need, yet he felt an immense curiosity about the world outside. He wanted to know what life was like for ordinary people beyond the protected environment he knew. After much insistence, his father finally allowed Siddhartha to take a trip into the city. But the king had a plan. He ordered that anything sad or unpleasant be hidden so the prince would only see the beautiful side of the city. At first, Siddhartha saw exactly what his father intended: happy people, blooming gardens, and children playing. But then, at one moment, he looked to the side and saw something he had never seen before. A very old man with wrinkled skin, walking with great difficulty while leaning on a cane. Siddhartha had never seen an elderly person like that, and he was deeply confused. He asked his charioteer, "What happened to that man? Why does he look so weak?" The charioteer explained, "My prince, we all grow old. One day we will all become like that, including you and me." Siddhartha was shocked. He had never realized that people aged and became frail. This thought stayed with him, but the journey continued. Soon after, he saw another scene that disturbed him even more. A very sick person lying by the side of the road, trembling and moaning in pain. "What is happening to that person?" Siddhartha asked. The charioteer replied, "They are ill, my prince. Anyone can become sick, and no one can escape it." Siddhartha felt a wave of fear. "Can this happen to anyone? Even me and my family?" he asked. The charioteer nodded solemnly. As they continued their journey, Siddhartha came across something even more sorrowful: a funeral procession. He saw people crying as they carried a lifeless body. "Why are they crying?" Siddhartha asked, his heart heavy. The charioteer explained, "That person has died. Death is something that happens to everyone. One day, we all must leave this world." Siddhartha felt a profound sadness. He had never thought about death before. Until that moment, he believed life was filled only with happiness and comfort. But now he understood that pain, suffering, and loss were also part of life. Finally, on their way back to the palace, Siddhartha saw something that left him deeply puzzled, but in a positive way. A man who looked calm and serene, dressed in simple clothes and radiating an aura of peace. He seemed unaffected by wealth or the suffering around him. Siddhartha asked the charioteer, "Who is that man, and why does he look so happy?" The charioteer replied, "That is an ascetic. He has given up all his possessions to seek truth and inner peace." Siddhartha was thoughtful. How could that man be at peace in a world full of suffering? These four sights, the old man, the sick person, the lifeless body, and the serene ascetic, forever changed Siddhartha. He began to realize that all the luxury of the palace could not protect him from the realities of life. He saw that everyone, including himself, was destined to face aging, illness, and death. At that moment, Siddhartha felt something new awaken within him, a desire to find answers. He wanted to understand why the world was this way and how people could find true happiness even amidst so much suffering. After seeing the reality of the world for the first time, old age, illness, death, and the serenity of a man searching for truth, Siddhartha Gautama could no longer live the same way. He returned to the palace, but he felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage. The banquets, parties, fine clothes, and beautiful landscapes no longer brought him joy. Something inside him was changing, and he knew he needed to find answers. Siddhartha spent sleepless nights staring at the sky, asking himself, why is there so much suffering in the world? Why do people grow old, get sick, and die? Is there a way to end this suffering? The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that a life of luxury and comfort did not hold the answers he was looking for. He tried to talk to his father, King Suddhodana, about how he felt. But the king, worried, tried to distract him with more parties and gifts, hoping Siddhartha would forget what he had seen. You are a prince, the king said. One day, you will be the ruler of this kingdom. Here you have everything you need to be happy. But Siddhartha knew true happiness did not lie in material things. He felt he needed to understand the world on a deeper level. After much reflection, Siddhartha made the most difficult decision of his life. He would leave the palace and everything he knew to seek the truth about life. He knew it would be painful to leave his wife, Yashodhara, and his son, Rahula, but he believed that if he discovered the cause of suffering, he could help many people, including his own family. On a silent night, while everyone in the palace was asleep, Siddhartha rose quietly. He went to the room where his wife and son were sleeping. He stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the goodbye. One day, I hope to return and share what I've learned, he thought, gently caressing his son's head one last time. Siddhartha then went to the stable, where his loyal horse, Kanthaka, awaited him, along with his charioteer, Channa. They were his trusted companions and knew that this night would be special. Without a word, Siddhartha mounted Kanthaka, and together they rode into the dark night. The cold wind brushed against his face, but he felt a freedom he had never experienced before. When they reached a distant, quiet place, Siddhartha dismounted. He turned to Channa and said, "Now you must return. Tell my father that I am leaving to seek the truth, but I am not running away from him. I am trying to find answers for all of us." Channa, in tears, knew he could not change the prince's decision. He bid farewell, knowing he might never see his friend again. Siddhartha then removed his royal garments, adorned with glittering jewels, and let them fall to the ground. He took a simple robe like that of an ordinary man and put it on. Then, taking a dagger, he cut off his long hair, a symbol of his royalty. It was as if he was shedding his old life entirely. Kanthaka, his faithful horse, neighed softly as if saying goodbye. It is said that even the horse shed tears, sensing it would never see Siddhartha again. "Now I am just a seeker," Siddhartha said to himself. He looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to appear. "I will find the answer to suffering, no matter the cost." With firm steps and a newfound sense of freedom, Siddhartha began to walk. For the first time in his life, he was alone, without palaces, wealth, or titles. It was just him and his determination to discover the truth about life. Thus began his great journey, which would eventually lead him to become the Buddha, the Enlightened One. This was the Great Renunciation, a defining moment when Siddhartha left everything behind in search of something greater, something no amount of wealth could buy, a deep understanding of the meaning of life and the path to end suffering. After leaving behind his life as a prince and all the luxuries of the palace, Siddhartha Gautama became a simple traveler, walking along roads in search of answers. He knew his journey would be difficult, but he was determined to uncover the truth about suffering and how to overcome it. He wandered from village to village, living as an ordinary man, asking for food, and sleeping under the open sky. Siddhartha decided that the best way to gain wisdom was to learn from the greatest masters of his time. He knew that many had already sought spiritual truth before him, and he wanted to absorb everything he could. His first teacher was a wise man named Alara Kalama, who taught meditation and mastery of the mind. Under Alara Kalama's guidance, Siddhartha learned how to meditate deeply, freeing his mind from all thoughts and worries. He practiced for hours on end until he felt his mind was at peace, almost as if he were floating. Alara Kalama was amazed at how quickly Siddhartha grasped his teachings. "You are the best student I've ever had," he told him. "You've mastered everything I can teach." Yet Siddhartha felt that something was still missing. He thanked Alara Kalama but decided to continue his journey. He thought, "This meditation has brought me peace, but I still haven't found the answer to the cause of human suffering." Siddhartha pressed on and found another renowned teacher, Uddaka Ramaputta. This master taught advanced meditation techniques that allowed the mind to detach completely from perceptions and experience an infinite void, a state of profound peace. Siddhartha dedicated himself to the practice and soon mastered these techniques as well. Uddaka Ramaputta was so impressed that he offered Siddhartha the chance to succeed him as the leader of his disciples. "You're the only one who has reached this level of meditation so quickly," the master said. But to everyone's surprise, Siddhartha declined. He explained, "These practices are powerful, but they haven't given me the answer I seek. I want to know how to end the suffering of all people, not just find temporary peace for myself." Once again, Siddhartha bid farewell to his master and continued his journey alone. He began to think that the answers might not lie solely in meditation practices. Perhaps he needed to go beyond what he had already learned. Siddhartha then heard about a group of ascetics, people who renounced all comforts and lived extremely simple lives, eating almost nothing and dedicating themselves entirely to spiritual practice. He decided to join them, believing that by denying all bodily needs, he might find enlightenment. For 6 years, Siddhartha practiced with these ascetics. He stopped eating solid food, surviving on just a few seeds or leaves. His body became so thin that his bones were visible, and he endured constant pain. But Siddhartha endured it all, thinking this would lead him to the answers he sought. He believed that by weakening the body, he could strengthen the mind. The other ascetics were impressed by Siddhartha's dedication. "If anyone is going to achieve enlightenment, it will be him," they said to one another. Yet, despite all the pain and sacrifice, Siddhartha began to realize something important. He was becoming so weak that he could barely think. Instead of sharpening his mind, this extreme suffering was clouding it. He saw that this path was not helping him. One day, while meditating by a river, close to fainting from hunger, a peasant woman passed by. She approached him and, seeing Siddhartha's condition, offered him a bowl of rice. First he hesitated. Accepting the food would mean abandoning the extreme path he had chosen. But then something changed within him. He realized that neither the luxury of the palace nor extreme suffering brought true wisdom. The answer, perhaps, lay in a balanced path, neither indulgence nor deprivation. He accepted the bowl of rice and ate slowly, feeling his body regain some strength. The other ascetics who had been with him were disappointed, believing Siddhartha had abandoned his purpose. They left him, thinking he would never achieve enlightenment. But Siddhartha wasn't giving up. In fact, he was discovering something entirely new and profoundly important: the middle way. He realized that true wisdom and inner peace don't come from extremes but from balance. With this newfound understanding, Siddhartha decided to continue his journey alone. He was more determined than ever, knowing he was getting closer to the answers he had been seeking. His next step would lead him to a moment that would forever change the course of humanity. After years of learning from great masters and enduring severe practices of fasting and self-denial, Siddhartha Gautama came to an important realization. Neither the comfort and luxury of the palace nor the extreme suffering of asceticism brought him the peace and understanding he sought. It was then that he discovered the secret of balance, a way of life he called the middle path, which avoids extremes and seeks harmony. With this new understanding, Siddhartha decided it was time to change his approach. He walked to a quiet spot and found a large fig tree with wide branches and lush green leaves that seemed to embrace him. Feeling a special connection to this place, he sat down under the tree, crossed his legs, and made a vow to himself. He would not rise until he discovered the truth about suffering and achieved enlightenment. The fig tree, later known as the Bodhi tree, became the stage for Siddhartha's final quest for truth. He closed his eyes and entered a deep meditation. Everything around him seemed to fall into a profound silence, as if nature itself was waiting for the outcome of that moment. But his meditation was not without challenges. A dark spirit named Mara, known as the demon of illusion and desire, appeared to test him. Mara did not want Siddhartha to achieve enlightenment and unleashed all his tricks to distract him. First, he summoned violent storms, thunder, and visions of terrifying creatures to provoke fear. But Siddhartha kept his eyes closed and his mind calm, refusing to let fear control him. When fear failed, Mara tried seduction, conjuring images of beautiful women dancing before him to stir desire and break his focus. Yet Siddhartha, with his clear and steady mind, saw through the illusions and remained unmoved. He knew they were fleeting and false. Frustrated, Mara made a final attempt. He challenged Siddhartha, saying, "Who are you to seek enlightenment? Who can testify that you are worthy of discovering the truth you seek?" In response, Siddhartha slowly opened his eyes, reached down, and touched the earth with his right hand, declaring firmly, "The earth itself is my witness." At that moment, the ground trembled softly, and a profound silence enveloped the scene. The earth had accepted his determination as truth. Defeated, Mara and his illusions vanished, leaving Siddhartha alone once more in peace. Siddhartha continued his meditation, delving deeper into his mind. He explored the secrets of existence, revisited all his past lives, and understood the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It was as if a ray of light had illuminated his mind, revealing the root cause of human suffering, attachment and desire. He realized that our pain and sorrow arise from our inability to accept the impermanence of life. With this profound understanding, Siddhartha finally attained enlightenment. He realized that suffering is an inevitable part of life, but that we can overcome it by letting go of our attachments and illusions. He had transformed into the Buddha, the Enlightened One, the one who had comprehended the true nature of existence and found inner peace. Buddha remained under the Bodhi tree for several weeks, absorbing the depth of what he had learned. He wanted to ensure he fully understood every aspect of the truth he had discovered. When he finally rose, he was no longer a prince seeking answers, but a teacher ready to share his knowledge with the world and help others find the path to freedom from suffering. Determined, Buddha began his journey as a teacher, spreading his message of peace, balance, and wisdom to all who were willing to listen. His quest for enlightenment had ended, but his mission to guide humanity had just begun. When Buddha rose from the shade of the Bodhi tree, he was no longer Prince Siddhartha. He was now the Enlightened One, someone who had understood the nature of suffering and discovered the path to inner peace. He knew he couldn't keep this truth to himself. His mission was to share what he had learned and help others find the same peace. He thought of his former companions, the ascetics who had abandoned him when he accepted the offering of rice from the peasant woman. Despite their differences, he understood that they were also searching for truth and might be the first to grasp his teachings. After a long journey, Buddha found the 5 ascetics at the deer park in Sarnath. At first, they were ready to reject him, but they soon saw the serenity in his gaze and knelt before him, recognizing his transformation. Buddha spoke with calm and clarity. He explained that suffering is not just physical pain but also the constant dissatisfaction we feel. This dissatisfaction arises from our desires and attachments to things and people, as if they could last forever. The ascetics, who had previously followed the path of extreme deprivation, realized that Buddha had discovered a deeper truth. They became his first disciples, forming the first spiritual community, known as the Sangha. Buddha then began his journey as a teacher, traveling from village to village, teaching anyone willing to listen. He spoke to kings and farmers, the young and the old, the rich and the poor, without distinction. His teachings were simple yet deeply moving. By practicing balance and cultivating compassion, he said, we can free ourselves from suffering and find true inner peace. Buddha's message spread quickly. People from different places came to hear him, feeling they had found something transformative. Many became followers and disciples, taking his teachings to other lands. Buddhism flourished as a way of life focused on self-awareness and healing, free from complex rituals. For Buddha, the goal was to help people see reality as it is and let go of the attachments that cause so much suffering. Over time, the Sangha grew and expanded, carrying Buddha's teachings to distant lands and touching thousands of lives. Buddha continued his journey with serenity and a gentle smile, always ready to teach and guide anyone searching for the path to true peace. After years of traveling and teaching the path to inner peace, Buddha decided it was time to return to his homeland. News that Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who had left the palace in search of truth, had become Buddha and a great spiritual teacher spread quickly. Everyone in the kingdom was curious and eager to see how he had changed. When Buddha arrived at the city gates, he was greeted by a large crowd. People of all ages gathered, from curious children to elderly villagers who remembered him as the young prince. The first to meet him was his father, King Suddhodana, who could not hide his mixed emotions. The king had hoped Siddhartha would return to take the throne, but now he saw his son had chosen a very different path. Even so, the king embraced him and said, "I lost a prince, but I gained a great teacher." There was silent pride in his eyes, mingled with longing. Buddha also reunited with his wife, Yashodhara, who looked at him with a mix of pain and understanding. She had spent all those years raising their son, Rahula, and wondering why Siddhartha had left her. Without needing words, she realized he had left not because of a lack of love but for a higher purpose, the desire to alleviate the suffering of all beings. Rahula, now a young boy, looked at his father with curiosity and respect. Buddha embraced him and said, "Rahula, now you are old enough to learn about the path I have found." From that moment, Rahula became one of Buddha's disciples. Buddha's entire family, including his wife and son, eventually became part of his community of followers, the Sangha. They no longer saw him as just Prince Siddhartha but as the Enlightened One. Buddha spent time in his homeland, teaching the importance of balance, acceptance, and letting go of attachments to achieve true happiness. Many were deeply moved by his wisdom and became his disciples. Buddha understood that he had not abandoned his family but embarked on a journey of discovery, and now he was sharing his insights with everyone. When he left his homeland, his heart was light, knowing he had planted seeds of wisdom and compassion that would continue to grow. And so, he moved forward, spreading his teachings to new places and guiding people toward peace and inner freedom. Over time, Buddha's teachings began to spread beyond his homeland. His disciples, inspired by the depth of his wisdom, took it upon themselves to share this knowledge in other regions. Traveling from village to village, they spoke about the middle path and how practicing compassion and letting go of attachments could transform lives. Buddha himself continued his journey, guiding new followers and emphasizing the importance of balance and acceptance. He avoided extremes, showing that true happiness didn't lie in wealth or deprivation but in living simply and mindfully. Those who heard his teachings felt as though he spoke directly to their hearts, addressing universal struggles like fear, sadness, and the pain of losing loved ones. One place where Buddha's teachings took root was the kingdom of Magadha, a prosperous land ruled by King Bimbisara. Upon hearing about the enlightened teacher, the king invited Buddha to his palace. After listening to Buddha's words, Bimbisara became a devoted follower and offered a monastery for Buddha and his disciples to practice and teach. This was a pivotal moment, providing the Buddhist community with a place to gather and deepen their understanding. As time went on, more and more people joined the Sangha, Buddha's community of disciples. They were not only monks and ascetics but also everyday men and women, farmers, merchants, and even members of royalty. Buddhism began to grow, not just as a practice of meditation and self-discovery but as a philosophy of life, offering guidance for living with less suffering and more peace. Buddha's teachings were simple yet profound. He spoke about embracing the impermanence of all things and recognizing attachment as the root of much suffering. He taught that by cultivating kindness, wisdom, and mindfulness, anyone could find inner peace. His followers carried this message to distant lands, where it was warmly received by people seeking answers to their struggles and anxieties. The Buddhist movement expanded like a wave of compassion and understanding, reaching new places like China, Japan, and Korea. In each location, unique traditions and practices emerged, adapting Buddha's teachings to local cultures. Yet, the core message remained the same. The path to freedom from suffering lies within each of us. Despite this widespread growth, Buddha remained humble. He continued to travel, teaching personally in small villages and offering guidance to those in need. He often reminded his followers that his teachings were only a map and that each person had to walk their own path. He would say, "Do not believe anything simply because I say it. Test it for yourself and discover what is true for you." Buddha's teachings spread like a light in times of darkness, guiding millions of people toward inner peace and true happiness. His journey continued, fueled by love and compassion, always striving to awaken more hearts to the truth. After decades devoted to teaching and guiding people far and wide, Buddha sensed that his journey was nearing its end. He was over 80 years old, and while his body had grown frail, his mind remained sharp and serene. He knew he had shared everything he could about the path to peace and liberation from suffering. Now, it was time to prepare for his departure from this world and to attain final nirvana, a state of eternal peace beyond the cycle of rebirth. Buddha gathered his disciples and informed them that his time was near. He wanted to ensure they fully understood his teachings and that the community was ready to continue the path without him. In his calm and gentle voice, he reminded them, "All that is born must one day die. This is the nature of life. Do not cling to this body you see before you. What matters are the teachings. Follow the path I have shown and continue to practice compassion and wisdom." Buddha then lay down beneath 2 trees that miraculously blossomed out of season, as if nature itself were bidding him farewell. He entered a deep meditation, surrounded by his disciples. A respectful silence filled the air, and many were in tears, knowing these were their final moments with their beloved teacher. Yet, as they looked at Buddha, they saw only serenity and an expression of absolute peace. Before entering his final meditative state, Buddha gave his disciples one last message: "Strive diligently for your liberation. Depend on no one but yourself. Each person is responsible for their own path." With these final words, he closed his eyes for the last time and entered parinirvana, the final nirvana. Free from all pain and attachments, his consciousness transcended the physical world, reaching the supreme state of peace. Though their master had left them, the disciples knew his presence and wisdom would live on through the teachings he had imparted. Buddha's body was cremated, and his ashes were distributed and enshrined in sacred monuments called stupas, which became places of pilgrimage and reverence. People from far and wide came to pay their respects, not just to the man Buddha had been, but to the light he had brought into the world. Even after his death, Buddha's teachings continued to flourish and spread. His simple yet profound lessons on suffering, compassion, and the importance of balance touched millions of lives. They guided people from diverse cultures and traditions to find a path toward inner peace. Over the centuries, various schools of Buddhism emerged, each with unique practices but all rooted in the same core truths Buddha taught: the impermanence of life, the transformative power of compassion, and the possibility of liberation from suffering. Today, more than 2,500 years later, Buddha's legacy remains alive. His teachings are followed by millions across the globe, not only as a religion but as a guide for living a more mindful and meaningful life. Buddha's journey was not just a quest for answers for himself. It was a gift to humanity, a message of hope that each of us, regardless of who we are, can find peace, wisdom, and freedom from suffering. And so concludes the remarkable journey of Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who left behind a life of luxury to seek something far greater, the truth about suffering and the path to inner peace. What he discovered didn't just transform his life, it changed the course of history forever. Buddha taught us that happiness doesn't come from wealth or extremes. The secret lies in balance, compassion, and embracing the impermanence of life. His timeless wisdom continues to inspire millions around the world to find their own path to peace and fulfillment. Now that you've heard the story of Buddha, take a moment to reflect. What small step can you take today to bring more balance and serenity into your own life? Remember, the journey to enlightenment begins within you. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn more about Buddha's teachings and how to apply them in everyday life, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you won't miss the next inspiring chapter. See you in the next video.